I could only pray 3 words. I trust you.
God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
Scripture tells us that every good gift comes from God. But what do we do when a good gift is taken away? I had the privilege of working with Kim Snyder years ago. Her voice was a gift. It was her life. She sang, she voiced projects, she worked in Christian radio at the highest level. And then a medical mistake changed everything. Her voice was gone. And for years, it never came back. After 15 years of pain and silence, Kim was left with a prayer that had no extra words. Just this: I trust you. Kim's story is about surrender, loss, and finding the faithfulness of God in the Bible.
My name is Kim Snyder. My voice has always been my life. I was a professional singer, a vocal repair coach, a national radio and commercial talent, and I had a beautiful family, a godly husband. And in a minute, it was all gone. It was a mistake in a simple outpatient procedure that left me dying in septic shock in the emergency room. I watched as my husband said goodbye, as I began to slip into brain death. And they took him to that special room where they told him I wouldn't survive. And as I slipped away, Jesus met me. He appeared to me as a massive lion with the most indescribably kind, loving eyes. And he pulled me in, nose to nose. And he didn't say a word. But without saying a word, he told me that he had me and that his plan was perfect. I thought that meant he was going to take me home. But I was ripped back to the excruciating pain of the intubation tube being pulled out. I almost died a few more times before I was sent home from the hospital. It took months for my brain to wake up. But when it did, I realized something else that was broken: my voice. They diagnosed me with severe vocal dysphonia. It's where every time you try to make a sound, your body literally chokes you. Every specialist said I was never going to talk or sing again. The damage from being left untreated in septic shock in the hospital for days had left me with damage to every major organ, the loss of most of my muscle. And as I relearned to walk, I found it had also impacted my bones, which were now deteriorating. I had 10 more surgeries in 2 years. In between, I was trying to sit up long enough to coach a couple hours a week. But in the last surgery, the anesthesiologist severed my entire right vocal cord and muscle, leaving me permanently mute. I slipped into the darkest depression. The head of my vocal repair organization got me in to see Dr. Nassari, the head of the laryngology department at Harvard, and the man who had pioneered the medical studies on the singing voice. My daughter was performing at an event in Disneyland, so we used the trip to see him at his Beverly Hills office, and I was so sure that Dr. Nassari was going to fix my voice. So sure that I promised a parent at the event that I would coach her daughters as soon as I was better. Never in my wildest nightmare did I expect to hear those words from the doctor. He said, "Even with everything you know and everything you've done, the best we can hope for is that you can develop a gravel that your family will someday come to recognize as you." I sunk into an even deeper depression. I didn't even try to get out of bed for months. But then I realized I had to figure out what to do with the 2 sisters I'd promised to coach. So I created their training program, thinking I'd hand it off to another coach. Then I realized I couldn't make the sounds that I needed to explain how to train them. And I was only trying to make 3 sounds. But it was like God was shining a spotlight on these little footholds that I could cling on to as I climbed my way out until, despite the medical science, I could both talk and sing again. I sat up only 2 hours a week, just long enough to coach my 2 new students. They went on to become Canada's New Artist of the Year and toured the world. But as their career took off, My spine continued to collapse, and soon I was back in the hospital for more surgeries. Every time I was on the mend, believing I would have a life again, something would send me right back to the edge of death. For 15 years, my children had no mother. My husband had no wife. My specialists were continually shocked that I was still somehow alive. And I lived in such brutal pain that the only prayer I could ever pray was for God to take me home. I was never able to go back to church. I couldn't bear to go online and glimpse the lives of everyone else when I would never have one myself. And out of the hundreds of incredible, God-loving people I had served alongside, only 2 ever even reached out to see if I was still alive. 15 years of dark isolation, excruciating pain. That is how long it took for me to realize that I hadn't even heard from God since he had appeared to me. I called out to him, but I didn't hear anything. So I went to the only place I knew he would be, my Bible. I scanned my favorite verses, and I didn't hear anything. I read an entire chapter thinking that would do it, but it didn't. So out of sheer desperation, I did what I had never even attempted to do in my entire Christian life. I read the whole book, and that's what changed everything. For the first time, I realized the Bible was never meant to be dissected into little inspirational thoughts. And I realized that my pastor was wrong. As a baby Christian, I had brought him all of the questions that came from my hunger to understand the Bible. But his answer to me was to leave the Bible reading to him. And I had. That's how I missed it. The Bible. This incredible, almost unbelievable plan that God had crafted not just for all time or for the whole world, but specifically for me. It was like a 10-dimensional picture that can only come into view once you put 1,000 puzzle pieces together. Oh, and once I saw it, I saw something else. That relationship I thought was so great with God was so one-sided. I had always talked to God a lot. I mean, that's the purpose of prayer, right? But I had never really sat still long enough to let him speak for himself. After that, I started studying the whole book over and over. On the outside, I was still dying, but on the inside, I became more alive than I had ever been. By the time I approached my 7th encounter with death, I was in too much pain to read anymore. I could only pray 3 words. I trust you. And one night, he responded, "Are you ready to be healed?" I nodded, thinking I was finally going home. Instead, I woke up to find that he had completely, miraculously healed me. For the first time in 15 years, I ran down the stairs, laughing the whole way. I skipped, just because I could, and all I could say over and over was, "You are so good."
For most of her life, Kim's voice was a major part of her faith. She served God with her voice, but suffering took that voice away. What remained was stillness. And in that stillness, Scripture. And in Scripture, Kim began to see something that she hadn't before. God hadn't left her in this season. He'd been waiting patiently. And when she could no longer pray long or loud prayers, a simple phrase carried her through. "I trust you." The Unfolding Short Stories is something we do on Tuesdays. If you have a story of something that God has done in your life, a season or a moment, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to record it. The Unfolding is a faith podcast. To hear more podcasts like it, you can discover more at myfaithpodcasts.com.